Hi, this is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextrous Gunfighter with our next episode in the Self-Defense Handgun Fighter video series. And this episode is on how to not be a noob at the gun shop. Now, there was a terrific video. It's on Active Self-Protection channel of this idiot being all casual and reckless with his pistol in a crowded gun shop and the subsequent negligent discharge as a result of it. And what I want to help you is to not be that guy. There's been times I've walked into a gun shop, especially some of the the high volume big chain gun counters, and there's been such noobs present that I've actually just walked out. I actually mean noob in the most derogatory way, a total disregard for the safety of others and the safe handling of firearms. So don't be that guy. There's nothing cool about being just this, gleeful casual in the handling of firearms. So how do you avoid being that idiot noob at the gun counter? Well, first things, when you go to the gun counter and you introduce yourself to the clerk behind the counter, do all your social conversation first. Before you even start handling any and looking at any firearms, get the social conversation part over with. If you want to talk a little bit about the weather or the sports game, sports ball or swingy stick or whatever, get that over with before you take the firearms. When you start handling the firearms, I want you to be focused on the firearm, focused on safely handling it, and focused on why you're handling it. So the weapon as it's handed to you is kind of maybe a test, especially if you go to some older gun shops. They may have actually checked the weapons and made sure that they're empty before they all do that, but they've checked the weapon before it's behind the counter and stuff. And he may actually hand you a firearm like this, magazine in, slides down, everything, and just hand it to you, just to kind of see what you're going to do. Now, he knows the condition. He has first-hand knowledge of the condition of the firearm already, but he's handing it to you to see what you're going to do with it. So this may be a test. Not always, but some of the older guys may do this to you. So they hand you this firearm, and what are you going to do? First thing, are you going to start going, pull the trigger, look at the, No. First thing, someone hands you a firearm, the first thing you do, okay, in this case I've got a magazine in, so let's drop the magazine. We've got some dummy rounds in there. Now we're going to do a chamber check. So, magazine out. Chamber check. Now I have first-hand knowledge of the condition of this firearm. Now, another thing is they may hand you the firearm with the. You may actually see them do a chamber check and then hand the firearm to you. Now you may think, oh, I saw him do the chamber check, therefore I don't have to do a chamber check. Now I can just go ahead and do a dry fire or something. Whoa, wait. I don't care if someone's done a chamber check, they've got first-hand knowledge of it, you do not. So they do a chamber check, they hand it over to you, you take it, do your own first-hand knowledge chamber check. Make sure that weapon is empty. Okay, now of course one of the things you're going to want to check probably on a firearm is to see what the trigger feels like. You want to see if it has a nice crisp cream break and maybe even check the reset and all stuff like that. So before after you've done your chamber check and make sure the firearm's safe, before you even pull that trigger, one is make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. Still, even though you know it's empty, make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. Now, usually in a gun shop, that's going to be up kind of high. Now, the reason, one is there's customers to one side or the other, and there's, of course, also the clerk right in front of you. So you don't want to point the pistol at the clerk and then pull the trigger. That's not cool. And then, of course, if you're pointing it to the dude next to you, he has no first-hand knowledge of the condition of the weapon, so he may have a live firearm on him and then shoot your ass. So point it up high in a safe direction to do a dry fire check. Now, before you even do a dry fire thing, it's courtesy to ask the clerk, may I dry fire the pistol? Now, they're almost always going to say yes. There are a few pistols that maybe they don't want you to dry fire, but almost any modern pistol is going to be fine with dry firing. Now, you may also ask, would you like me to use a snap cap? And a lot of times they don't care about that. Okay, so we've asked the clerk, may I dry fire the pistol? We've checked the chamber, and I usually check it several times. Just want to make sure before I dry fire. Now I point it in a safe direction, do my little dry fire, feel the trigger, nice clean break. Now I may want to check the reset, so I'm going to pull a slide back just a little bit, and then feel the reset, and then maybe dry fire again. So another thing I'm always wanting to check is to make sure that the slide releases work equally on both the right and left hand side of the weapon for ambidextrous use of the firearm. So I will then ask, may I use the slide releases to drop the slide on this firearm? Now, a lot of places will be okay with it. Some, maybe not. And you may ask for do you have a snap cap that I can put in the magazine, and therefore use a snap cap to help to reduce the speed of it as I check the slide releases. And that's having a fake cartridge in there helps slow things down a bit. Now some shops will have some snap caps there for you to try, both for dry firing and to also do use the slide releases. Now I am always wanting to check, of course, often when I'm for shooting left-handed, the slide release on the right-hand side, because on a lot of pistols those are very poor. They don't function nearly as well as the one on the other side. So I'm always wanting to make sure that it works. It's perfectly mirrored, that it works just as well for left-handed as it does right-handed. And so now you may, if you have some of these Glock dummy rounds, 9mm dummy rounds, or plastic, you could bring those and use those to do to release the slide on top of a dummy round. But before you just go and take this dummy round and use it in their pistol, show them the dummy round, say, you mind if I put this plastic dummy round in the magazine and drop the slide on it? Now they may not want to do that. They may not want to risk that. Even though they look at that, they just don't want any risk of accidental introduction of a live round, which I could understand. But if they have a snap cap, or if they'll let you use your plastic dummy round, insert that in there, and then we can do the check of the slide release. Now, during this whole process, do not let the muzzle cover anything you don't want to destroy. That means the clerk in front of you or other customers to the left and right of you. So always be very well aware of where your muzzle is pointing. So when you're operating the slide, it should be pointing up or perhaps down if that's the safe direction. And then you can lock the slide back, but even with the slide back, keep that muzzle point in a safe direction. That just should be an automatic thing for you. Always keep the muzzle point in a safe direction. And then also, to demonstrate your own professionalism and non-noobiness, always index your trigger finger. Keep that thing, do not be just introducing that trigger finger into the trigger guard just randomly. It should only be there when you're doing dry firing. Every other time, every other examination of the pistol, index that trigger finger. So right there, chamber check, keeping your muzzle in a safe direction, index your trigger finger, and I guarantee that for a lot of gun store clerks, especially the older school gun stores, you're going to gain a lot of respect. You're definitely going to recognize that you're not just a newbie a newbie person looking for guns. One thing I saw recently with the coronavirus thing, the whole panic, was we saw a lot of videos of a lot of liberals in, like in Portland and California and whatnot, they were just queuing up at the gun stores to buy them out. And I saw videos of just random people just waggling around firearms with their triggers and the fingers in the trigger guard, just totally oblivious to any safety issues. I can imagine it must have been maddening for the gun store clerks to have to deal with that. Now, another thing to do is kind of good courteous. Let's say, okay, I've looked at the firearm, I'm done looking at it, now you're going to set it back down on the counter. Now, first lock the slide back. To me, when you're exchanging weapons, I prefer to always make sure the slide's locked back. And typically a lot of the gun stores, when they hand a weapon to you, they're going to lock the slide back and hand it to you. And if they do, even then, I'll drop the slide and then do a chamber check. Okay, so when it comes time, you're done looking at the pistol or the firearm, and you're going to set it down on the counter. You've got the slide locked back, so that's one layer of safety there. Indexing your trigger finger. Now when you go to lay it down, don't just point it at the gun store clerk or at people to the left and right of you. Angle it off so it's not pointing at anybody, and then set it on the counter, the gun store counter. And that's just a little bit of extra, paranoid safety. Just keep that muzzle of the slide lock back pistol, set it down on the counter, and make sure it's in a safe direction. I mean, there may be people walking back and forth behind the counter, but initially set it down in a safe direction and then hands off. And now we can switch back to social mode. We're not dealing with the firearm anymore. You're not looking at the features of it, testing the features of it. You've set it down on the counter. It's now the clerk's responsibility to pick it up and store it, or continue with the purchase or whatever. And now you can get back to the social conversation if that's what you want to do. It's because we're now done. We're done with the weapon. We're done focusing on that. So now we can talk to the clerk again. Now, one other thing is if you are completely new to firearms and you're not familiar with the manual of arms, ask the clerk to show you. You could ask him about the details on this. How does the safety operate? What safety mechanisms are in the firearm? Ask him about the slide stops. How do they work? You can even ask them to field strip it for you if you like, to let them show you how that's done. So don't be afraid to ask the gun store clerks to show you how the weapon works. Don't try to bluff your way through how a weapon works. There's been plenty of time. I mean, I've shot not thousands, maybe hundreds of different weapons, and but there's been plenty of times that someone's handed me a firearm to try out, and I've asked, well, show me the manual of arms. How does this work? Because I look at it and I go, this is not something I'm totally familiar with. So show me how this works. So this is Mark Laughlin with Ambidextrous Gunfighter. Thanks for watching. Do not be the gun store noob. Please like, share, and subscribe.